Very good afternoon to you. Welcome to this live proceedings of the National Assembly this afternoon of 26th April 2018. This is the second sitting of the day. The members did hold a sitting in the morning, courtesy of an approval that was passed or made yesterday by this particular House. And in the morning, the members were considering some amendments to the Computer and Cyber Crimes Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017, where some new clauses were included in that particular bill. Among them, the clause 12A, which states that a person who knowingly publishes information that is false in print, broadcast data, or over a computer system that is calculated or results in panic, chaos, or violence among exceeding 5 million shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years or both. That is one of the new clauses which was included in that particular bill, or in this particular bill, of course. This plus some other clauses were debated before this House. Among them, the establishment of a National Computer and Cybercrime Coordination Committee. That is one of the proposed amendments which was passed by the Committee of the Whole House. So this afternoon, there will be a motion on the report of the Committee of the Whole House on that particular bill, the Computer and Cyber Crimes Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017, that this House do agree with the report of the Committee of the Whole House on its consideration of the particular bill. A question for the amendments and to recommit clause 23 and new 16S will be put. It is important to mention that the bill has not yet sailed through for a third reading. It will be going back, if at all the motion will be approved by the House. That particular bill will be going back to the Committee of the Whole House so that the clauses 23 and new 16S will be debated before the Committee of the Whole House. Another motion which will be put before, or which will be moved before this House, is on the approval for ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area and the COMESA, East African Community, and SADC Tripartite Free Trade Area agreements. That this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations on that particular report. Another motion will be moved before this House by the Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and this particular motion is on the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2017-2018. That this House adopts the second report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the supplementary estimates for the financial year 2017-2018, laid on the table of the House on the 24,618,617 in respect of the votes as contained in the attached schedule. If you are just joining us, the Deputy Speaker, Moses Chiboy, is currently walking into the chambers. This broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation.
Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful as a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country, and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Honorable members, before I order the bell to be rung, I probably would want to see the numbers that are getting in. Can we confirm if we have the required numbers?
Okay.
I actually think we do, so business will begin.
Remember. Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Under that particular order, I see quite a number. Actually, 2. Let's start with Honorable Joseph Manje.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me this chance. Thank you, Speaker. I, the undersigned, on behalf of the people of Kajiado North, draw the attention of the House to the following: that Chapter 5 of the Constitution on Land and Environment, specifically Article 61, provide that land in Kenya shall be held, used, and managed in a manner that is equitable, efficient, productive, and sustainable, and in accordance with certain principles inter alia security of land rights. That Section 111 of the Land Act 2012 envisages that if land is acquired compulsorily, just compensation shall be paid promptly in full to all persons whose interests in the land have been determined. That in March 2018, the Lands Ministry provided a comparable rate for land transaction on parcels of land affected by the standard gauge railway, citing a land value survey undertaken by the ministry along the standard gauge railway, phase 2, a corridor which the National Land Commission was to adhere to. That it is alleged that the comparable rates provided by the ministry were inconsistent, bearing the fact that the rates of the values of land provided for Kandisi area and Gong area are largely divergent despite the close proximity between the two settlement areas. That comparable rates provided by the ministry had valued the land in Meljo and Olkeri areas. That the comparable rates provided by the ministry have demonstrated inconsistent with the value of recent land transactions that have been undertaken in certain areas within the constituency. Further, that effort to persuade the relevant authorities to review rates have been borne no fruits. That the matter presented in this petition is not pending before a tribunal or court of law. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Department Committee on Lands, recommends review of the comparable rates provided by the Ministry of Lands with the aim of varying the rates provided for the Ongatarongai station to equal the value of Gong SGR station. Recommends that the value of land in Koroi and along Nairobi Magadi Road be upscaled to match the values provided for Gong area. 3, recommends scale up of rates provided for Kandisi, El Meljo, and Olkeri areas, and ensures that the petitioner's plight is addressed. And 5, makes any other order or direction that it deems fit in circumstances of the matter. And your petitioners will pray will ever pray. And Speaker, this is an issue of urgency because the compensation will start as soon as possible. It might start as early as next week. Therefore, I pledge the LAD committee should take this issue immediately, because if they start compensating, then it might take a different direction. I do pray.
Honorable Manje, you have proceeded to debate even after giving the petition. But let me give maybe 2 members to speak on this one. I would want to see the indication of those who want to speak to it by pressing intervention, but let's start with Honorable Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to support the Honorable Manje's petition and say that in Makueni, we had a similar experience when the railway was going through. And also now we have Fwake Dam, which is going through compensation, and honestly there are serious challenges. As much as Honorable Manje would want it to be done next week, first we need to confirm that it is in the budget and it is through the relevant ministry, because the relevant ministry is the one which works together with the National Land Commission. There has been challenges of different nature, including corruption in the compensation. And in fact, some people have been compensated land which does not belong to them. So eventually it ends up being a court case and it delays the process. So I want to support your petition and really request Parliament to give direction in this matter, so that the people whose compensation has not been done is done within the law and within the right rates. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I don't see any other member who is interested. Nobody else, because I've asked that anyone who was interested should press intervention. So on this one, I think we have the chairperson, Departmental Committee on Delegated Legislation. So we will be having Honorable Murungara for that particular one. Murungara, are you the one, or is Honorable Fatuma? Yes. Honorable Fatuma, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, April 26, 2018. Report on the Committee of Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Community Land Regulation 2017. Thank you.
Very well.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Very well. Then I think again it's Honorable Fatma Gedi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Community Land Regulation 2017, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, April 26, 2018, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 15(1) of the Statutory Instrument Act and the Standing Order 210(4)B, annuls the Regulation 23 and 24 of the said regulations.
Very well. Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Honorable Kimunya.
Honorable Speaker, sir, I wish to issue the following on behalf of the Education and Research Committee. Honorable Speaker, sir, the Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, MP, had sought a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research, pursuant to Standing Order number 444-2, on the denial of access to the Kenya National Examination Council in Nairobi, and more specifically on the manner in which the Honorable Bernard Shinali, member for Ikolomani, and the Honorable Emmanuel Wangwa, member for Navokolo constituency, were handled at the Kenya National Examination Council offices along Dennis Bridge Road in Nairobi. The members were denied access to these offices on Wednesday, the 28th of March, 2018, and members had gone to seek for a meeting with the Chief Executive Officer and the Chairperson of the Kenya National Examination Council to deliberate and resolve the cancellation of 2017 examination results for Chebuyusi Boys High School, where 190 students are affected. Honorable Speaker, I wish to report that the Principal Secretary, Minister of Education, State Department of Early Learning and Basic Education, accompanied by the Acting Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya National Examination Council, appeared before the committee on Thursday, the 19th of April 2018, and responded to the statement sought by Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe MP. Honorable Speaker, the Education and Research Committee, Vice Chairperson, myself, had undertaken to have the House appraised on the matter on or before the 24th of April, and indeed, I was here.
While undergoing treatment in India.
Yes, Leader.
Honorable Speaker.
Just a minute, Honorable Leader, what is it?
Chair, the Chair of Legal Affairs Committee has asked through you an extension. So before we move to the next statement, you are to make a decision. Have you granted him or not?
Actually, what, you know, I had approved that yesterday already. So I think what the chair wanted was to put it to the House so that the House is aware. But yesterday, we actually consented to it. So it was good for the House just to know what is happening. Okay, proceed, Honorable Mwambire.
Honorable Speaker, sir, I wish to make a statement regarding the demise of the 2002. The late Hon. Kingi served as a Member of Parliament for Ganze constituency from 2003 to 2007 and was an active member of various House committees, including the Public Investment Committee. Alongside the late, was appointed to Cabinet as an Assistant Minister for Internal Security and Provincial Administration, a position he served in 2006 and 2007. Thereafter, he served as the chairman of the Kenya Ferry Services and later as the board member for the Coast Water Services Board. Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the members of the National Assembly, that of the Parliamentary Service Commission, and indeed on my own behalf, I wish to convey our condolences in the family, friends, and the great people of Ganze constituency for the great loss. At the National Assembly, we assure the family of our support during this period of grief. In one of the exemplary and illustrious service rendered to the nation and the society by the Hon. Kingi, and with our indulgence, Speaker, sir, I request that we all stand and observe a minute of silence.
Now, you have done three things.
I'm begging.
You have done three things that you are not supposed to do. Number one, you have given your condolences on behalf of the National Assembly, which you shouldn't, because that is a preserve, of course, of the Speaker or his designated appointee. You have also given out another condolence on behalf of the Parliamentary Service Commission, which you probably are not a member of. And lastly, you have also asked members to stand and observe 1 minute silence, a power which, of course, you do not have. But, of course, I agree with you that this is a very serious. I understand when you speak in that manner. I understand because this is a person whom you probably have served closely, him being your constituent, and you having gotten a seat which he himself had served at one point or another. So I understand the difficulties that you're having in terms, of course, of the sad loss. But, of course, on behalf of the National Assembly, I take the opportunity myself to give condolences on behalf of the National Assembly. Now, ordinarily, we observe a minute silence, mostly for members who are serving. So in this particular one, the condolences would suffice. But encourage members, especially I served with him myself, so I know him personally. But I ask the members who would be able to make it to the burial, to probably attend that, and probably also if there are other issues, they can coordinate with the member of parliament for that particular constituency. So my condolences, of course, on behalf of the National Assembly. And I would give maybe two members, because we are short of time for them to, and I'll be really looking out for those members who served with him as much as possible. And I would take those ones who are the intervention slot. But I see Honorable Lago Luoch. You want to speak to this one, or you were on something else?
Mr. Speaker, just what you have spoken about, just to clarify to Honorable Member, that in addition to your condolences, there will be a condolence book at the main reception.
Absolutely. As well said. Okay, Honorable Jimmy Nuru Angwenyi. Of course, I know he served with the late Kingi.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, mine, send my condolences and the condolences for my people to the family and friends of our late Honorable Kingi. He was a great man. He served with me in Parliament. He was very active. Of course, I was more active than him, but he was very active, as a result of which he was appointed as a minister, and he performed very well. May God rest his soul in eternal peace.
Yes, maybe let me look out also for, do I see any member from the neighborhood of Honorable Babaya? You want to speak to this one?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, yes. I am the neighboring constituency, Kilifi North. We border with Ganze. I knew the Honorable Kingi as a vibrant trade unionist and teacher who really, for many years, fought for the teachers of Kilifi and in the country generally, and set a very good platform for development for Ganze constituency. Suffice it to say also that when he served as an assistant minister in the office of the president during Kibaki's time, I think he advanced the cause of the coast in a very bigger way. During that time, I think the coast had the opportunity of having ambassadors that were appointed that time, especially coming from Kilifi, and very many people who also were appointed as DCs and DOs. So we cannot forget the good things that Honorable Kingi did, and therefore on behalf of Kilifi North constituency and on behalf of Kilifi County, I would like to pass sincere condolences to the family, friends, and relatives of the late Kingi. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Maybe one more member, and then we... No, Manzo has already spoken. Honorable Gogo Achieng, you want to speak to this particular one? Okay, then we'll probably have the majority leader to present his papers as we consult on something here.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2A, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee. The committee met this week at the rise of the House to give priority for business for this week and the remaining part next week. As members are aware, Tuesday, 1st of May 2018 is a public holiday, and in this regard, no business was scheduled for that day. Yesterday, the House Business, or the House for that matter, approved a procedural motion on the alteration of the sittings as per the calendar. And as such, there shall be a morning sitting on Thursday, 3rd next week. However, on Wednesday afternoon, there shall be the joint sitting of both houses of parliament for the State of the Nation address by His Excellency the President in accordance with Article 132, 1, Roman B, 1B and C of the Constitution. Then, also at the same time, Mr. Speaker, the House.
Very well. Well, we'll go to the next order, but there is a document which we are consulting on, and should we agree on it, we will allow for its disposal, one way or the other. So proceed to the next order.
Order number 8, motion. Report of the Committee of the Whole House on the Computer and Cyber Crimes Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017.
Okay, on this we'll be doing two things, but the second one will be a consequence of the first one if it goes through. So the first is to put the question, which I will put the question, which is that the motion for agreement with the report of the Committee of the Whole House be amended by inserting the following words, subject to recommittal of clauses 23 and new clause 16F. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. 16s, sorry, I did not say 6. I said 16s. Yeah? Honorable members, it's 16s. There are a series of 16s. 16 with an S is 16s. That's what I just put the question. Yeah? Yes, I say 16 with an S there. All right? So honorable members, I now will put the question, which is that this House agrees with the report of the Committee of the Whole House on its consideration of the petroleum. Sorry. Just a minute, honorable members. We are having an issue here, but don't you worry. I'm perfectly it's nothing to do with petroleum. This is cybercrime. So, that this House do agree with the report of the Committee of the Whole House on its consideration of the Computer and Cybercrime Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017, subject to recommittal of clauses 23 and new clause 16. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. What is it, leader of majority? I see there is an expression in your face that is not ordinary.
Chair, you know this bill is a very important bill, so we were recommitting clause 16 in totality.
Yes.
From A to J, but
16s. That's why I say 16s.
You know, 16s. You know, we come from different communities with different phonetics. Problem with the phonetic of the English language.
Just to be very clear.
And you have made it very clear.
Just to be very clear, it is the entire 16.
The entire
so
16.
There are several, you know, specific bits in there. So I think that is clear. That should settle the leader of majority and the rest.
Okay.
And therefore, now we will go to the Committee of the Whole House.
Order, members.
Committee 23. We are starting with the 23.
By the leader of majority. I can see the Osoti Geoffrey.
Madam Chair, I think the amendments as proposed by the Chair, Security Committee, is very retrogressive. I would propose that...
Honorable, for your record, the clause amendment is by the
23.
leader of majority. Honorable Duale.
Yes. I'm looking at, there are two amendments. Yeah. So, my proposal is this. My proposal is this. In the bill, If you look at clause 23.
Order, members. Let him speak. You know how we deal business in the House. Yes.
Madam Chair, I was looking at clause 23 as in the bill. And if you look at the amendments proposed by the chair of the ICT are making an improvement to this section. But the other amendments seem to be really losing the meaning of this section of the bill. For example, Madam Chair, the issue of complexity of technology, which is under 23.3, has been left out. Issue of technical assistance, when you need technical assistance in the matters of CISA.
Now, Honorable Osoti, I remember some of the amendments were dropped in the morning. In the morning, they were dropped. The chair of ICT.
Honorable Chair, I want to inform the member that all the amendments that were brought by the Department of ICT are there. What we are only discussing now is the additional amendment on obstruction. So it's just additional. All hours are in. You remember in the morning we wanted to drop that particular clause, but it's been recommitted.
Thank you. I put the question, that is the mood of the House. Honourable members, I now put the question, which is that clause 23 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as are of this opinion say aye? As many as have contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honourable members, I put the question to the clause, which is at clause 23, as amended, be part of the bill.
I beg to move that new clause 16I be now read a second time. The justification of Honourable Chair is to insert a provision of offences and penalties for cyber terrorism crime as part of the offences in the proposed law, which is now largely a security-related law. Such a crime would therefore attract a fine of not more than 3 million shillings or imprisonment of not more than 10 years or both. We are proposing to link the definition of terrorism to the definition obtaining in the Terrorism Act of 2012. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Members, I propose a question which is that new clause 16A be now read a second time. I put the question which is that new clause 16A be now read a second time. Will as many as are of this opinion say aye? And as many as are contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Members, I put the question, I propose a question which is that new clause 16A be part of the bill. I put the question, which is that new clause 16A be part of the bill. Will as many as are of this opinion say aye? And as many as contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next clause.
So new clause 16A, 16B, 16C, 16D, 16E, and 16F.
I propose a question, which is that, no, before I propose a question, I need the mover to move second reading.
Honorable Chair, I stand to move that new clauses 16A, B, C, D, and F be introduced as on the other paper, subject to the committee.
Honorable Chair, be now read a second time.
Honorable Chair, I move that clauses 16A, B, C, D, and F, E and F be read a second time. These are new clauses to enhance the penalties that we have introduced to the bill.
Okay. Honourable members, I propose the question, which is that new clauses 16A, B, C, D, E, and F be now read a second time. I see no interest to speak to this. Yes, Honourable Musimba.
Chair, thank you. I think there's one thing which we've agreed. These are all new offences which are being added. So in terms of the numbering of A, B, C, D, E, would leave that to be done by the clerk's office for polishing. But they are all distinct offenses. So that then there's no confusion in when they're saying, oh, we are amending 16A to 16I, or A, B, C, D. So that is a substantive amendment which you're making, Chair. But all the offenses by the ICT committee, by the Chair, Administration and Security, and myself are all new offenses which you all agree upon. So I just wanted your guidance.
Honorable Musimba, so are you saying you've in an agreement that
Yes.
are you dropping yours?
No, I'm not dropping. They are all new, all of them. I'm supporting. I'm in support of the amendments.
You are consolidating all of them.
Consolidating work has to be done by the clerk's office. Yes.
Honorable Musimba, even as you and the other chairs concur, if you notice new clause 16B of the committee is almost the same but slightly different from 16D of yours. So that's why you agree. So one has to be dropped. Give the chair, Mike.
We had said these are all new clauses. What Honorable Musimba and what Honorable Koinanga brought is all new, but the numbers are the same. But we say the Secretariat will do the polishing and renumber all. Of Musimba are similar. But since this is enhanced, mine gets dropped. B is dropped.
D is dropped.
B
is you are yours.
Yeah, yes, mine is dropped, and we.
Yeah, yes, because you don't expect the Secretariat just to
Yes.
get amendments here and they just drop and.
Yeah.
Chair, both Honorable Musimba and the Chair ICT must withdraw the statement. The Secretariat will do it. The Secretariat have no legislative powers in lawmaking. So you say you withdraw. Yeah, because we don't want to find tomorrow somebody go to court and says that in the Hansard that Secretariat were given certain functions. They have absolutely no powers.
Correct.
To make law.
It's correct. The Honorable Chair, yes, get into record.
I'll sit down with Honorable Musimba and our team as members to polish.
Thank you. And so the B is dropped. Honorable members, yes, the Secretariat will not just go in and start altering or changing any amendments as had been proposed, either by individual or committee member. The honorable members, and I therefore propose the question, which is that clauses 6. Now that you have dropped B, I put a question which is at clauses 16A, C, D, E, and F. Be now read a second time. I put the question which is at clauses 16A, C, D, E, and F be now read a second time. Will as many as are of this opinion say aye? And as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now propose the question which is at clauses 16A, C, D, E, and F be part of the bill. I see no interest to this, and thus I move to put the question which is at clauses 16, new clauses 16A, C, D, E, and F be part of the bill. Will as many as are of this opinion say aye? And as many as contrary opinion.
New clause 16A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H.
Yes, there is Honorable Musimba to move the second reading.
Yeah, I move for second reading as per the order paper, Chair. And my justification, as I said earlier.
No, Honorable Musimba, maybe you said you move those clauses.
Yes.
Be now read a second
Yeah.
time.
I move that the new clauses be read a second time.
Which new clauses?
16A, my 16A, 16B.
Are of this opinion say aye, and as members of contrary opinion say nay, the ayes have it. Now, members, I pose the question, which is that new clause 16A to 16H be part of the bill. I see no member wants to contribute to see, and so I move to put the question, which is that new clause 16A all the way to 16H be part of the bill. Will as many as are of this opinion say aye? And as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next. Honorable members, we are through with the recommittal. And so I call the mover to do reporting.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Computer and Cybercrime Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Honorable members, I put the question for reporting, which is that the committee do a report to the House its consideration of the Computer and Cybercrime National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017 and its approval thereof with amendments. Will as many as are of this opinion say aye? And as many as of contrary opinion say nay? Honorable members, the ayes have it.
Let's have the chair.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Computer and Cybercrimes Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017, and approved the same with amendments.
Very well. Let's have the mover of the bill to move reporting. Agreement.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I request Honorable Chair of Security, Honorable Koinange, to second the motion for agreement with the report of the Committee of the Whole House.
Honorable Speaker, I do second.
Thank you. Very well. And I propose a question which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Do we have members who want to speak to it? Yes. Okay. We'll start with is it the leader majority?
Mr. Speaker, today is a very important day in the history of Kenya. Very, very important day. There are people who acted and behaved with impunity. But this law will deal with them upon assent. And we don't really want to ask the Legal Department of Parliament to prepare the vellums as quickly as possible, that the President can assent to that law latest by Tuesday before he comes to make his address of the nation. Speaker, this bill will deal with those who create fake news. This bill will deal with those who use technology in the wrong way, like what happened to the Deputy Governor of Kirinyaga. This bill will deal with those guys who made people die 10 times when they are still alive. This law will deal with all the fraud that is taking place in the financial sector. This bill will deal with all those who use technology to radicalize, to recruit our youngsters into terrorism. And I'm sure the famous bloggers and users are watching me. You have 3 or 4 days to do whatever you want to do before the law comes into effect. Speaker, we want the social media to be used very responsibly. The social media is a very integral part of the society when it is used. And Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is very, very clear that you must respect the freedom of others. Where your freedom ends is where the freedom of the other person begins. And you cannot be a squatter in another person's. Also, those who run their business and their families and their daily food by using the social media platforms available for constructive engagement, who are using it to create fear, to extort, to blackmail, to stalk, to destroy families. Today we are giving the people of Kenya a piece of legislation that will create harmony, that will create stability, that will give us people to offer constructive and reasonable criticisms where it's needed. And I want to thank the members who are since morning who are sitting in this house, and members who contributed, the ICT committee, the security committee, Honorable Musimba, Honorable Ososi, who is, and I pray that he becomes a bona fide Secretary General of his party. And I wish, you know, the Amani coalition, Amani party, should have talked to me. Barack Muluka is not the right guy to be SG. You know, it's just like, you know, when they made my good friend, Ababu Namwamba to be the secretary of ODM. As an old member of that party, I told them, you guys, are you sure what you are doing? But barely 1 year later, they had to throw away Ababu Namwamba. So whoever becomes the secretary general of a party is not anybody you can just pick from the streets. So, yeah, minister, you know, you can work in the executive, but you cannot work in, the same person can't work in political parties. I remember Honorable Women Rep of Ikisi, Honorable Speaker, if you allow me, was one time a very powerful person in ODM. Without passing through her, you will not get a nomination certificate. You know, people don't know this lady. She was very powerful. In 2007 general election, she was the executive director of ODM then. And the chairman was Henry Kosgei, and the secretary general was Anyang Nyong.
Are you suggesting that even the member for Kuresoi then was a victim of Jack?
Of course. In fact, in 2007, there were many people who were rigged. And one of them is a substantive chair. I don't know whether she participated in the rigging of Honorable Cheboy, but chair, she was very powerful. And I'm sure we are calling her to cross now that, not the handshake. The handshake has collapsed with the speech of yesterday. There's no handshake anymore. We don't want a referendum. They want a referendum. So, you know, we can't go to bed together. We cannot agree to another level of devolution. It's expensive. Yeah, we can't agree. We are already having a problem with that. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want to thank members that this bill, this piece of legislation has delayed. It should have come in the 10th Parliament, in the 11th Parliament, but I'm sure members will agree with me that today we have set the stage, that we have a good piece of legislation that the President, I hope, will not return back in accordance with Article 115 of the Constitution, because we have taken care of everybody. And we have formed a very good advisory committee at the level of the National Security Council, where the DPP sits, where the AG sits, where the Kenya Defense Chief of Staff sits, where the PS Interior sits, where the PS ICT sits, where the Governor of Central Bank sits to represent the banks and the financial sector, where we have the DCI. So our friend Chacha, I don't know, he's called Chacha, the guy who harassed.
Is he your friend?
Yeah, the guy who harassed, the guy who, Waziri Chacha. If this law was in place, Waziri Chacha could have been dealt with a long time ago, because he has harassed people in this house. So I think, I think the first person who will test this law will be, in my opinion, the penalties. And they're very hefty. People should know, very hefty, 5 million.
Of abuse of not just social media, but use of technology. Mr. Speaker, only this week, we have witnessed a very sad and unfortunate incident involving a gentleman from Kirinyaga County And I'll not speak about this, Mr. Speaker, because I'm a man or because the person affected is a public officer. But, Mr. Speaker, this bill speaks to issues to do with pornography. Whoever that person is, whether a public officer or not, Mr. Speaker, is a father, is someone who has a wife and a family. What we are doing, Mr. Speaker, not just in the protection of the man's or the lady's privacy, but what we are doing to the social fabric of our nation using social media, Mr. Speaker, is unfortunate. And I hope that this law, Mr. Speaker, will not just be one of the laws that will exist in our books, but is a law that will be used to check this degradation of our social fabric, Mr. Speaker, because this abuse of social media, Mr. Speaker, is destroying not just families, is destroying our children, destroying that social fabric of our nation. There are things that when we grew up, Mr. Speaker, you would not even walk into a room when your father was there naked. But we are taking pornography and videos of naked fathers and broadcasting them to very young children. Yes, and mothers, Mr. Speaker. We must bring this to an end, Mr. Speaker. And I do pray that this law will be enforced and put to good use to check on this abuse, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, let me, without saying much, just support and ask those in charge of not just ICT. And that is why the issue of domicile, Mr. Speaker, is really not an issue, Mr. Speaker, to ask.
Are you a no,
Mr. Speaker, you know, I have been a victim of these things, Mr. Speaker. And I speak with authority because I have suffered with things being sent to this phone,
Are you
Mr.
saying
Speaker.
that you have also been photographed in that type of situation?
I have been a victim, Mr. Speaker, because I have a multi-layer of passwords on my phone. Because I have young children in my house. And the kind of things that are sent to our phones, Mr. Speaker, are things you never want. Leave alone your wife seeing and accusing you of those things being true, Mr. Speaker, or those people, knowing those people. But children, Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about protecting our children, Mr. Speaker, from these
Agreed.
things. And therefore, I want to encourage both the Ministry of ICT, because it must be a collaborative effort between ICT and those in charge of security, Mr. Speaker,
Okay.
to take charge and make sure that the law is implemented.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's give Honorable Janet Ongera herself, the one who the leader of majority said is an extremely powerful person, especially in the past. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I'm still very powerful. I'm the Deputy National Chairman of Orange Democratic Movement. Mr. Speaker, the time is long overdue that we passed a regulation on cybercrime. And Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that this bill has actually come almost to the end tails in this House. Mr. Speaker, a time has come that we need to regulate social media. Particularly, Mr. Speaker, I'm very concerned on the issue of extortionists. We have young boys and girls who have become now extortionists. They extort money from members of parliament, they extort money from public servants, they extort money from anybody and anything that flies in social media, Mr. Speaker. And unless we regulate these youngsters, we are going to have a society or be faced with young people who are doing nothing but waiting to earn money which they have not worked for. And Mr. Speaker, we cannot encourage that in our society. For me, I'm very happy, Mr. Speaker, that we can regulate now social media, particularly issues on WhatsApp, Mr. Speaker. We need that forum to be regulated. You cannot just be put on WhatsApp without your consent, Mr. Speaker. I expect that these are issues that this bill has looked at, and I'm happy that they were included. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to support the majority leader, and I beg to support it.
I see there's a lot of interest in this, but we can't go, for the remaining part of the afternoon. There was only a gentleman from, yes, let's have you member there. Yes, proceed.
Because technology has come in the 21st century, and therefore it is crucial, it is quite crucial that we support this motion and ensure that this bill goes through and becomes law. Mr. Speaker, cybercrime is so bad, so very bad, and therefore it is important that we all gang up against it in that matter. The Standard newspaper on the 10th of April 2017 reported that Kenya is the worst hit by cybercrime, and therefore this bill is too late, far too late for it to arrive, and therefore we must take action as soon as possible and fast track it.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, I will finalize on this very quickly. Cybercrime is growing so fast that it is at the peril. It is at its peril. Kenya lost $171 million, and Tanzania lost $85 million. Uganda lost $35 million, all in cybercrime. The rest of personal and economic loss is so overwhelming, and therefore our society is so much strained by the crimes and the criminal gangs online, the criminal gangs that utilize our time, our lives, and all that, and therefore I support this bill. Thank you very much.
Very well,
motion, rather.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mohammed Sheikh, member for Wajir South. For those members who are asking what his name is, and you can see it's a man with some English from Queensland. Now, honorable members, I think we shouldn't take too long on that. It's over, so let me put the question. Having confirmed, I know the interest is immense, but let me put the question. Having confirmed that there is a requisite quorum in the House for purposes of making this decision, I put the question, which is that the Computer and Cybercrime Bill. Honorable members, I put the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. So let's move, let's call the mover to move that reading, please.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Computer and Cybercrime Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017, be now read a third time. I also request Honorable Musimba to second for agreement.
Honorable Dr. Musimba. Proceed, Honorable.
Honorable Dr. Musimba, PhD holder in technology.
I thank you, Honorable Leader, for the opportunity to second. Indeed, this is momentous. This is historic. This will go far in developing this nation, because finally we have a vessel which we can propel this country to the next level. So I do second with a lot of humility.
Very well. And I propose the question, which is that the Computer and Cybercrime Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017, be now read a third time. Having confirmed, of course, that we have the required quorum in the House for purposes of making this decision, I put the question, which is that the Computer and Cybercrimes Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017, be now read a third time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Yes, and okay, proceed.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for offenses relating to computer systems to enable timely and effective detection, prohibition, prevention, response, investigation, and prosecution of computer and cyber crimes, to facilitate international cooperation in dealing with computer and cyber crime matters, and for connected purposes.
Very well. Now let's move to the next order, but before then I will allow Honorable Fatma Gedi to table a report that you should have tabled earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the report with me, as I promised. Thank you. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, April 26, 2018, the Public Finance Management Senate Monitoring and Evaluation Regulations 2018.
Very well. Table the report and then
I move the
notice.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Public Finance Management, Senate Monitoring and Evaluation Regulation 2018, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, April 26, 2018, and pursuant to the provision of Section 18 of the Statutory Instrument Act 2013 and the Standing Order 210-4B annuls in entirety the said regulations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, approval for ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, and the COMESA, EAC, and SADC Tripartite Free Trade Area, TFTA agreements.
I had been given the names of the members who would be moving and seconding this particular one, and I actually see the member there, so let's have you moving this report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The names you are given is Honorable Soro.
Onyengo.
Yes.
Osoro.
Mr.
Member
Speaker,
for South Mugirango, that is.
Yes, member for South
Proceed.
Mugirango. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the motion that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations on the consideration of the African Continental Free Trade Area and the Tripartite Free Trade Area agreements laid on the table of the House on Thursday, April 26, 2018, and pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the ratification of the African Continent Free Trade Area and the COMESA, EACC, SADC Tripartite Free Trade Area agreements. Mr. Speaker, on the 29th of March 2018, the leader of the majority party in the National Assembly tabled on the floor of the House a cabinet memoranda on the ratification of the following agreements. Number 1, the African Continental Free Trade Area agreement pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012. And number 2, the Tripartite Free Trade Area agreement pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012. Mr. Speaker, once ratified, the agreements shall become part of our Kenyan laws as provided for in Article 2.6 of the Constitution, which provides that any treaty or convention ratified by Kenya shall form part of the law of Kenya under this Constitution. The agreements were subsequently committed to the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations for consideration and report to the House. And in considering the agreements, the committee held a total of 2 sittings. And pursuant to Article 118, 1B of the Constitution on Public Participation and Section 8.6 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012, the committee placed advertisements in 2 local dailies, that is on the 19th of April 2018, requesting for submissions of memoranda on the subject matter. There was no response from the public. However, as part of the public participation, the committee held sittings with representatives from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade as the key stakeholders in this matter. Mr. Speaker, these agreements aim at improving intra-regional trade and intra-African trade through the establishment of a larger market with a single economic space and to address the challenges of multiple membership with trade blocs. And I'll start to a bit of highlighting of what the African Continental Free Trade African Agreement stands for. In January 2012, that is 2012, the Assembly Heads of States that lead to a dynamic and interdependent African economy. This thus paves the way for eventual establishment of the African Economic Market or Economic Community. The action plan is also a project of the African Union under its Vision 2063, which is a strategic framework for the socio-economic transformation of the continent in the next 45 years. Yes. Subsequent to the 2012 decision, the African Union held several negotiations which culminated with the signing of the agreement establishing the treaty, protocol on trade in goods. and services, and protocol on rules and procedure in settlement of disputes, and their respective annexes in Kigali, Rwanda, which was held in 21st March of 2018. The main objective of the agreement is to create an expanded and secure market for the goods and services of the state parties through adequate infrastructure and the reduction and progressive elimination of tariffs and non-tariff barriers. Mr. Speaker, these are the obligations that are imposed by the agreement. The modalities for trade liberalization negotiated provides for liberalization of up to 90% of total tariffs for each member state, including sensitive products within a period of 13 years for least developed countries and 10 years for non-LDC, the countries that are not least developed. The national interest. What is the national interest of this agreement? The national interest, Mr. Speaker, is the advancement of economic prosperity of Kenya and her people. Number one, the agreement will lead to the creation of a wider and expanded market. Number two, the agreement will promote a cross-border investment, leading to increased Kenya's entrepreneurs to invest across Africa. And you know Kenya has a vibrant manufacturing system, which will not benefit from this opportunity, but its people will benefit from the creation of new employment opportunities. Number three, under the Big Four agenda that the government has, the share of manufacturing to gross domestic product is to be raised from the current 9% to 15% by 2022. The agreement will be important for the realization of this objective, since majority of Kenyans or Kenya's export to Africa are manufactured goods. Mr. Speaker, the following are the policies and the legislative considerations in the agreement. The agreement will be implemented in accordance with the existing domestic legislation. Kenya has enacted the Trade Remedies Law and is currently setting up the requisite institutions to operationalize trade defense instruments and measures. These measures are contained in the agreement, and they include anti-dumping and safeguards to protect infant and strategic sectors from unfair competition. And the following are the financial implications of the agreement. The ministry that is responsible for trade will need resources for implementation of the agreement to pay the annual subscription and cost of sensitization of various stakeholders. The summary of the process leading to the adoption of the agreement and the date of the signature is as follows. The agreement is being fulfilled pursuant to Abuja Treaty of 1991, the Constitutive Act of the African Union of 2000, and the African Vision of 2063. The Assembly of the Heads of State and Government of the African Union, held in January 2012 in Addis Ababa, and adopted a decision to establish a continental free trade area by 2017. This agreement was thereafter signed at the extraordinary summit of the AU Assembly on the March 21st, 2018 in Kigali. Mr. Speaker, the tripartite free trade area agreement established among the common market for East and Central and Southern Africa, the East African Community and the Southern Africa Development Community, of course, began when the tripartite head of states held a meeting on 22nd of October 2008 in Kampala, Uganda. They decided on expeditious moves towards establishment of the tripartite free trade area among the three regional economic communities. The official launch of the agreement took place during the second tripartite summit held on the 12th June 2011 in Johannesburg. The conclusion of the same was done after the adoption of the main outstanding annexes, which was held in July 2017 in Kampala, Uganda. The agreement is in line with the resolution of the African Union Summit held in Banjul, Gambia in July 2006, which directed the African Union Commission and the regional economic communities to harmonize and coordinate policies and programs of regional economic communities as important strategies for rationalization and to put place mechanisms to facilitate the process of harmonization and coordination within PES, and to address the challenges of multiple membership by harmonizing rules and policies such as health and technical standards, rules of origin and customs, trade facilitation and transit issues, with a long-term goal of moving to other deeper levels of integration. What could be the national interest, Mr. Speaker, of this agreement? In simple terms, Mr. Speaker, this is for the benefit of advancement of economic prosperity of Kenya and her people. You know, Kenya has been trading in Africa as much as it has been trading with the rest of the world. So Kenya exports, as we said earlier, to Africa range between 41% and 45% in the last decade, which have been mostly to ESC and COMESA market. Policies such as the rules of origin, customs cooperation, and technical and health standards have been harmonized, and this will facilitate ease of movement of goods and business people. And also under the Big Four agenda, as I said earlier, the share of manufacturing to gross domestic product is to be raised from the current 9% to 15% by the year 2022. This agreement will therefore be important for the realization of this objective, since majority of Kenya's exports to Africa are manufactured goods. However, there are obligations to be made by this agreement. One of it is the liberalization of tariffs, which will be done immediately upon entry into force of the agreement, between 60% to 85% of the total tariff lines. ESC has negotiated as a block and has finalized tariff offers for liberalization for the countries that are not in the FTA, which are, of course, Angola, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Mozambique, and the Southern African Customs Union, commonly known as SACU, involving Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho, South Africa, and Swaziland. During the tripartite summit held on the 10th June 2015 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, His Excellency, the Deputy President, Honorable William Samoei Ruto, and the head of Kenyan delegation expressed Kenya's interest to host the Secretariat for the tripartite FTA. And what are the policies and legislation considerations? The agreement will be implemented in accordance with the existing domestic legislation, as said earlier, and Kenya has enacted the trade remedies law and is currently setting up the requisite institution to operationalize trade defense measures and mechanisms. These measures are contained in the agreement, and they include anti-dumping, as said earlier, and safeguards to protect infant and strategic sectors from unfair competition. But we equally have financial implications over the same, and this is where the rubber meets the road. The ministry responsible for trade will need resources for implementation of the agreement to pay the annual subscription and cost for sensitization of various stakeholders. And the summary of the process leading to the adoption of the agreement is as follows. The negotiation to the agreement began with the tripartite head of state, as stated earlier, on the 22nd October 2008 in Kampala. The official launch of the agreement took place during the second tripartite summit held on the 12th June 2011 in Johannesburg. The conclusion of the same was done after the adoption of the main outstanding annexes, which was held in July 2017, Kampala, Uganda. And this was concluded and signed on the 10th June 2015. But there are various protocols and annexures that had not, that had to be negotiated and adopted. It shall enter into force once the 14 partner states has ratified the agreement and deposited instruments of ratification. The Republic of Uganda and Arab Republic of Egypt have ratified the agreement. Mr. Speaker, upon looking at the agreement, the committee made the following observations. And as I conclude, that the Constitution in Article 2.6 provides for the entrenchment of this agreement into the laws of Kenya. The agreement is aligned to Article 3C, which, and I quote, accelerate the political and socio-economic integration of the continent, and I, I quote as it states, coordinate and harmonize the policies between the existing and future regional economic communities for the gradual attainment of the objective of the Union of the Constitutive Act of the African Union. Number 3 observation that the committee made is that Article 15, which talks about the waiver of obligation, I'm almost done, Honorable Kimani. I'm done, actually. And Protocol on Trade in Goods, Article 17, which talks about anti-dumping and countervailing measures, is in tandem with provisions under Trade Remedies Act, which provides for anti-dumping and countervailing measures. The agreement provides for an expanded market for both manufactured and primary goods for Kenyan products within a single economic space with a population of 625 million people. So therefore, the implementation of the agreement will resolve the challenges faced with multiple membership to the RECs. Mr. Speaker, the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations recommends that, pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act, the House approves the ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which has about 30 articles, and tripartite free trade area agreements, which has about 45 articles, as they are in Kenya's national interest. Mr. Speaker, I wish to move this motion, and I request Honorable Caleb Amisi to second. Thank you.
Okay. Member for Saboti, is it?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to second the motion on the ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And this has come at the most opportune time when we are told that the world is slowly becoming global, and there also comes with a competition in terms of international trade. And this agreement puts our nation, when we are talking of the Agenda 4 as a country, we cannot be talking of Agenda 4 if we are not very keen on our position in the international market. And the African continent as a whole, Mr. Speaker, has about 1.2 billion in terms of population. I think after Asia, we are second in the world population. So it is imperative as a country to be part of this agreement that enable us to tap into this growing market of the continent. And besides that, Mr. Speaker, sir, this agreement is going to create a single continental market for goods and services that will enable free movements of business and persons, and also will also expand our extra-African, intra-African trade among our, economic partners, the economic bloc communities, the EAC, the COMESA, and harmonize in our trading, agreements in terms of making sure that the partner, the state partners and which belongs to more than 2 economic blocks, like maybe Kenya, for example, is in East African Community, is also in COMESA. Another one is also in COMESA and is also in SADC. So it is it brings harmonize the trading activities of state partners. And this is also going to resolve or promote the industrial development through the diversification and the regional value chain development through agriculture.